When 7-8-year-old Sharon Rose walked into one of Los Angeles's most exclusive boutiques in her casual clothes after a long flight from Indiana, she never imagined she would be escorted out by a manager who considered her a threat to his elite clientele. She wore worn jeans, a denim jacket, and sneakers, the perfect travel uniform, but apparently the wrong outfit to step on Maison Éclat's polished marble. What the store staff didn't know was that Sharon wasn't alone, that her son would respond in a way none of them could anticipate, and that his decision would not only shake that boutique, but reframe the conversation about luxury, respect, and who truly deserves access to exclusive spaces. The Los Angeles heat beat down hard that August afternoon when Sharon stepped out of the taxi in front of Rodeo Drive. She had flown all night from her small town in Indiana, where she still lived in the same modest house she'd shared with her children decades ago. Despite her eldest son, Axl, having offered countless times to buy her a mansion or move her to a more luxurious neighborhood, Sharon always refused. She didn't need luxuries, she said. She needed her memories, her garden, her neighbors who had known her forever. But today was different. It was her 78th birthday, and Axl had insisted she come to California to celebrate together. He'd sent her the plane ticket and told her to take the day for herself before meeting for dinner. Sharon decided to do something she'd never done. Enter one of those elegant stores she always saw in magazines. Not necessarily to buy something expensive, just to look, to feel part of that glittering world, even if just for a moment. Maison Éclat was exactly as she'd imagined. The windows displayed dresses that looked like works of art, the mannequins wore jewelry that probably cost more than her house, and the glass doors reflected her own image. An older woman with gray hair pulled back in a ponytail, no makeup, wearing wrinkled travel clothes. For a second, she hesitated. Maybe she should have gone to the hotel first, changed, fixed herself up a bit. But she was already there, and after all, she just wanted to look. She pushed the door and entered. Freezing air conditioning greeted her along with the scent of expensive French perfumes. The white marble floor shone so brightly she could see her reflection. There were 3 customers inside, all impeccably dressed, all being attended by saleswomen who smiled and nodded at their every word. Sharon stood by the entrance, waiting for someone to greet her. No one did. A blonde saleswoman in a tight black dress walked past her carrying a tray with champagne glasses toward the other customers. Sharon smiled, trying to make eye contact, but the woman completely ignored her. She walked slowly toward a table where silk scarves were carefully folded. The prices weren't visible, something Sharon found strange. She gently touched a lavender-colored scarf, admiring the softness of the material. "Excuse me, do you need help with something in particular?" The voice behind her was cold, cutting. Sharon turned and found a tall man in a dark gray suit. His badge read Gerard, floor manager. His expression wasn't friendly. "I'm just looking," Sharon replied with a nervous smile. "The scarves are beautiful." Gerard looked her up and down, his gaze stopping at her worn sneakers. "I'm afraid our products require special handling. Perhaps it would be better if you explored other stores more, shall we say, accessible for your budget." Sharon's face flushed. She wasn't angry yet, just confused. "I have money," she said softly. "I just wanted to see what you have." "Ma'am," Gerard said, lowering his voice but keeping it firm, "Maison Éclat caters to a very specific clientele. Our customers expect a certain atmosphere when they shop here. I'm sure you understand. There's a shopping mall 3 blocks away where you'll find more suitable options." Sharon felt as if she'd been slapped. The other customers were now watching them, some with curiosity, others with what seemed like approval of Gerard's attitude. One of the saleswomen, a young girl named Maya, according to her badge, watched the scene from behind the counter with a frown, but said nothing. "I understand perfectly," Sharon said with all the dignity she could muster. Her voice trembled slightly. "I didn't mean to cause any trouble." She headed toward the door, feeling all eyes on her. Gerard followed her, apparently to make sure she actually left. When Sharon reached the exit, she turned once more. "You know, there's something you should know about judging people by their appearance, but I suppose that's something you'll have to learn on your own." She stepped out onto the street where the heat hit her like a wall. Her eyes filled with tears, but not from sadness. It was humiliation mixed with rage, that horrible feeling of being seen as less, as unworthy, as someone who didn't even deserve to be in the same space as other people. She walked aimlessly for several minutes, trying to calm down. She wasn't going to let this ruin her birthday. She wasn't going to give them that power. But the more she walked, the more she thought about all the times in her life she had felt exactly the same way. She remembered when she was a young single mother, when she took Axl and her other children to thrift stores and employees followed her as if she were going to steal something. She remembered school meetings where other mothers, the ones with husbands and nice houses, barely spoke to her. She remembered every door that closed, every look of contempt, every time someone decided she wasn't enough based solely on her clothes or her address. And now, at 78, with a son who had achieved extraordinary success, with a life full of pride for everything she had overcome, there were still people who looked at her and only saw someone who didn't belong. She sat on a bench in a small park and took out her phone. She hesitated before dialing. She didn't want to worry Axl, didn't want him to think she needed him to rescue her, but she needed to hear his voice, needed to remember who she really was. "Mom," Axl's voice sounded cheerful. "Did you arrive okay? Where are you? Are you at the hotel already?" "Hi, honey." Sharon tried to sound normal, but her voice betrayed her. "What happened?" The joy instantly disappeared from Axl's tone, replaced by concern. "Are you okay? Did something happen to you?" I'm fine, Sharon said quickly. "I just had a small incident. Nothing serious." "What kind of incident?" Sharon sighed. "I went into a store on Rodeo Drive, that Maison Éclat, and well, they asked me to leave. The manager said I wasn't the appropriate type of customer for their store." Silence on the other end of the line. A long, heavy silence. "Repeat that," Axl said finally, his voice dangerously calm. "It's nothing, son. You know how some places are. I just shouldn't have gone in like that in my travel clothes. It was my fault for not thinking. If you say that again, I'm going to hang up and then call you back just to tell you that it's never your fault when someone treats you without respect," Axl interrupted. "Give me the full name of the store again." "Axl, please, don't do anything dramatic. I don't want trouble." "Mom, do something for me. Go to the hotel. Rest. Enjoy the day. We'll see each other tonight for your birthday as planned. And don't think any more about that store. I promise." That was 3 days ago. Now Sharon stood in front of her hotel, looking at an invitation she had just received. It was thick cream-colored paper with embossed gold lettering. "Cordially invited to an exclusive event tonight at 8 p.m. at Maison Éclat, Rodeo Drive. Dress code, elegant." The invitation was signed by the new owner. Sharon read the invitation 3 times. New owner? Maison Éclat had been under the same management for decades. What was happening? She called Axl immediately. "Did you receive something today?" he asked casually, too casually. Axl rose. "What did you do?" "Me? Nothing illegal, I assure you. I just made a small real estate investment." "You bought the store?" "Not exactly. I bought the building where the store is located, and then I bought the brand, and then I reorganized the entire corporate structure. But those are boring technical details." Sharon didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Son, this is too much." "For you, it's never too much," Axl responded firmly. "And besides, this isn't just for you. It's for all the people who were ever treated as if they didn't deserve to be in a certain place. Are you coming tonight?" Sharon looked at the invitation again, then at her reflection in the hotel mirror. This time she wasn't in travel clothes. She wore an elegant navy blue dress that Axl had sent to the hotel that morning, along with the invitation, with a note that said, "Although you could show up in pajamas, and you'd still be the most dignified woman in any room. I'll be there," she said finally. That night, when the taxi stopped in front of Maison Éclat, Sharon almost didn't recognize the place. A red carpet extended from the sidewalk to the entrance. Photographers clustered on both sides. Limousines constantly arrived, dropping off celebrities, designers, influencers, and people Sharon recognized from magazines and television. Jared was at the entrance, supervising everything with his usual expression of superiority. He didn't recognize her when she got out of the taxi. He only saw an elegant woman in an expensive dress and opened the door for her with an exaggerated bow. "Good evening, ma'am. Welcome to Maison Éclat," he said with his most rehearsed smile. Sharon stopped in front of him and looked directly into his eyes. 3 days ago, you told me this place wasn't for people like me. Gerard's smile froze. His face went from white to red in seconds. I didn't. He began to stammer. Don't worry, Sharon said, walking past him. Today it's not for people like you either. If you've made it this far, leave me a comment telling me what you think of this story. Inside, the store had been completely transformed. The lights were warmer, less intimidating. They had removed some of the mirrors and replaced them with local art. The pretentious classical music had been changed to something more welcoming. But the most notable thing was the people. There were celebrities, yes, but also regular people. A woman in a nurse's uniform still on, an elderly man in work overalls, families with children, everyone mixing, everyone being attended with the same respect and attention. Maya, the young saleswoman who had observed the incident days earlier, approached Sharon with a genuine smile. Mrs. Rose, what an honor to have you here. I want to apologize for not saying anything the other day. I should have spoken up. Sharon took her hand. You weren't responsible for your boss's behavior, but I'm glad you're still working here. The new owner gave us all the option to stay or leave with a generous severance. Some left. Gerard resigned this morning, but many of us stayed because we believe in what this is becoming. The lights dimmed and a voice announced, Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the new owner of Maison Éclat. Axl Rose stepped onto a small stage installed in the center of the store. He wasn't wearing his usual rocker outfit. He wore a simple but perfectly tailored black suit. His hair was pulled back. He looked more like a businessman than a rock star, and that was exactly the point. Thank you all for coming, he began. I know many of you are wondering why a musician would buy a luxury fashion boutique. The answer is simple. Because my mother was rejected here 3 days ago. A murmur ran through the crowd. Cameras began recording intensely. 3 days ago, Axl continued, my 7-8-year-old mother, a woman who raised me and my siblings alone, who worked double shifts to feed us, who sacrificed everything so we could have opportunities, was treated as if she didn't even deserve to look at the products in this store. Why? Because she wore jeans and sneakers after an overnight flight. He searched for Sharon in the crowd. Their eyes met, and he smiled before continuing. I didn't buy this store for revenge, though I won't lie, it was satisfying. I bought it because I wanted to prove something. I wanted to prove that luxury doesn't have to be exclusionary, that quality doesn't require arrogance, that you can sell beautiful products without making people feel inferior. He pulled a paper from his pocket. These are the new values of Maison Éclat. First, every person who walks through those doors will be treated with the same level of respect, regardless of their appearance, their language, or how much they plan to spend. Second, 15% of our profits will go to organizations that support single mothers and low-income families. Third, once a month, the store will open exclusively for essential workers, teachers, nurses, paramedics, who will be able to shop with significant discounts covered by the company. The crowd erupted in applause. Some had tears in their eyes. Fourth, Axl continued when the noise subsided. We're launching a completely new line called Dignity. It will be high quality but accessible clothing, designed for people who want to look good but can't afford luxury prices. Profit margins will be minimal. The goal isn't to make money from that line. The goal is that no one ever feels like my mother felt again. He got off the stage and walked directly to Sharon. He took her hand and led her to the center of the room. Mom, there's something you've always wanted to do for as long as I can remember. Something you never allowed yourself because you considered it an unnecessary luxury. Sharon looked at him confused. You always said you wanted to learn to design clothes, that when you were young you dreamed of creating dresses. Well, I just hired 3 of the best fashion designers in the country to be your mentors. You're going to have your own small collection within Maison Éclat. It's going to be called Sharon's Garden, like your garden in Indiana that you love so much. Sharon opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Tears ran freely down her face. Axl hugged her tightly while the crowd applauded. You'll never be rejected from any place again, he whispered in her ear. And if anyone tries, they'll have to deal with me. The following months were a whirlwind. The story went viral. Rockstar buys boutique that rejected his mother was trending for weeks. But the most notable thing was the domino effect. Other luxury brands began to re-examine their admission policies. Some did it genuinely, others just for public relations. But change had begun. Sharon temporarily moved to Los Angeles to work on her collection. For the first time in decades, she allowed herself to dream of something other than just surviving. She worked 10 hours a day with the designers, learning techniques, experimenting with fabrics, creating pieces that reflected her life. Strong, practical, but beautiful. Maya was promoted to floor manager. Her first action was to implement an unconscious bias training program for all staff. The store began hiring more diverse employees, not as decoration, but because they truly valued different perspectives. Gerard, meanwhile, struggled to find work. Other luxury stores knew what he had done. His name had become synonymous with exactly the kind of elitism the industry was now trying to avoid, at least publicly. 6 months after that night, Maison Éclat officially presented the Sharon's Garden collection. The event was bigger than the previous one. This time, Sharon wasn't just the guest of honor. She was the lead designer. The dresses she created told stories. One was inspired by the uniform she wore when she worked as a waitress, but transformed into an elegant design with functional pockets because working women need pockets, Sharon said. Another was made from recycled denim, a nod to the jacket she wore the day she was rejected, but elevated with handmade embroidery representing flowers from her home garden. The final dress in the collection was called Open Doors. It was completely white, symbolizing new beginnings, with golden seams forming the silhouette of an open door on the back. Sharon modeled it herself in the fashion show, walking down the runway with her head held high. A 7-8-year-old woman, proving it's never too late to pursue your dreams. The collection sold out in 3 days, not because it was from Axl Rose, not because it was a good story. It sold out because the clothes were genuinely beautiful, functional, and had soul. A year later, Sharon was still living between Indiana and Los Angeles. She had launched 2 more collections, both equally successful. But more important than commercial success was what it represented. Every time someone bought one of her pieces, they bought a story about second chances, about dignity, about refusing to be defined by others' prejudices. Maison Éclat had become the most successful luxury boutique on Rodeo Drive, not despite its new policies, but because of them. It turned out that when you treat everyone with respect, when you offer quality without arrogance, when you build a brand based on real values and not just artificial exclusivity, people respond. Sharon never forgot how she felt that day when she was rejected. But now, when she walked through the doors of Maison Éclat, the same doors that once closed on her, she saw something different. She saw a mother with her daughter shopping together, laughing. She saw a nurse trying on a dress from the Essential Workers Discount collection. She saw people of all ages, races, and social classes sharing the same space, being treated with the same dignity. And she knew that, although it had taken her 78 years, she had finally found her place. Not because someone gave her permission to be there, but because she and her son had created a space where everyone had permission to be. Real luxury, it turned out, wasn't in high prices or closed doors. It was in knowing that no matter who you are or what you look like, there's a place where you're welcome, where you're valued, where your dignity is never in question. And it all started with a rejected mother, a son who refused to accept it, and the understanding that changing the world sometimes means buying the store that didn't want you and transforming it into something better than it ever was. If this story moved you and you want to see more content like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. One ordinary morning at New York's John F. Kennedy International Airport, amid the bustle of rolling suitcases and announcements of delayed flights, a 19-year-old woman named Sophie Morrison walked nervously toward her boarding gate. She wore a worn Guns N' Roses t-shirt, ripped jeans, and black boots. In her backpack, she carried a ticket she had saved for months, working at a coffee shop. A first-class seat to Los Angeles, where she would finally attend the concert of her life. Sophie wasn't an ordinary girl. Since she was 13, Axl Rose's music had been her refuge. Every time life got tough, every time she felt the world ignored her, she'd put on November Rain, and everything made sense. Her friends mocked her obsession, but she didn't care. For Sophie, Axl wasn't just a legendary rocker, he was the voice that had saved her life on more than one occasion. She had sold illustrations online, worked double shifts, sacrificed outings, and new clothes, all to buy that first-class ticket. She wanted to travel comfortably, wanted to feel special even if just for a few hours. because in her daily life, no one treated her that way. When she arrived at the check-in counter, a middle-aged employee with her hair pulled back in a tight bun and a name tag that read, Linda, looked her up and down with barely disguised contempt. Sophie extended her ticket and ID with a shy smile. Linda took the documents, reviewed them slowly, and then frowned. "First class?" she asked in a dry, almost accusatory tone. Sophie nodded. "Yes, that's correct." Linda let out a brief, dismissive laugh. "Are you sure this ticket is yours? Because it doesn't look like you can afford it." Sophie's cheeks flushed. "I paid for it myself. I work and save for this." The employee narrowed her eyes. "Sure. Look, I'm going to need you to show me the proof of purchase, your credit card statement, and some additional identification. We can't let just anyone through with a suspicious ticket." Sophie felt the air catch in her throat. "It's not suspicious. I bought it on the airline's official website 2 months ago." Linda ignored her and called a supervisor on the radio. "I have a situation here at the counter. Possible ticket fraud." Within minutes, a burly man in a dark suit with an even more hostile attitude approached. His name was Gerald, and he barely looked at Sophie before judging her. "We're going to need you to come with us," he said without preamble. Sophie felt panic. "Why?" "I haven't done anything wrong." Gerald grabbed her arm firmly. "Don't argue. If the ticket is legitimate, we'll sort it out. But for now, you're coming with us." They dragged her toward a small side office while dozens of passengers watched with curiosity. Some took out their phones and started recording. Sophie felt tears burning her eyes, but she refused to cry in front of everyone. Inside the office, Gerald and Linda bombarded her with questions. "Where did you get the money? Who helped you buy this? Do you know that lying is a crime?" Sophie answered with a trembling voice, showing them her confirmation email, screenshots of her bank account, even photos from her job at the coffee shop. But nothing seemed to convince them. They were determined to see her as a scammer. After nearly 40 minutes of humiliating interrogation, Gerald finally said, "Look, we can't let you board. We're going to cancel your ticket and escort you out of the airport. If you really bought it legitimately, you can file a formal complaint later." Sophie exploded. "You can't do this. I have the right to fly. I haven't done anything wrong." But her protests fell on deaf ears. They took her out of the office, led her through the airport hallways while people kept watching and recording, and finally left her on the curb of the arrivals area. Without a ticket, without a clear explanation, with nothing but humiliation and rage. Sophie collapsed onto a metal bench, her hands shaking and tears finally rolling down her cheeks. All that effort, all those months of saving, all for nothing. And worst of all, she would miss the concert. The concert she had waited years for. Axl Rose's concert. She took out her phone with trembling hands and began writing a tweet to vent. She didn't expect anyone to see it, but she needed to release the frustration somehow. "I just got kicked out of the airport for looking suspicious. I saved for months to see at Axl Rose in LA, and now I won't be able to go. All because I don't look like someone who can travel first class. This is unfair." She posted it without thinking much about it, put away her phone, and stared into space. She didn't even know what to do now. Meanwhile, somewhere in New York, Axl Rose was in a hotel suite, checking his phone before leaving for the next concert. He liked to read what fans said on social media, even though his team insisted he shouldn't. But Axl had always been rebellious, even with his own managers. Scrolling absent-mindedly, a tweet mentioning him caught his attention. It was Sophie's. He read the words once, twice, 3 times. Then he saw the girl's profile picture, a young woman in a Guns N' Roses t-shirt smiling in front of a poster of the band. Something about that story hurt him deeply. Axl Rose had lived his own share of rejection and humiliation before fame. He knew what it was like to be judged by your appearance, to be treated as if you didn't deserve to be in certain places. And the idea that a true fan, someone who clearly loved his music with all her heart, would be treated that way by a cruel and prejudiced system made his blood boil. Without a second thought, he called his assistant. "I need you to find out everything about this girl, Sophie Morrison. Now." His assistant, accustomed to the rocker's impulsive decisions, simply nodded and got to work. In less than an hour, they had the information. JFK Airport, the incident with the airline staff. Even videos that some witnesses had uploaded showing them dragging her out. Axl clenched his jaw. "Get the car ready. We're going there." His manager tried to stop him. "Axl, we have to be at the studio in 2 hours. We can't." "I don't give a damn about the studio," Axl interrupted with that raspy, authoritative voice that brooked no argument. "A fan of mine is suffering unjustly. I'm going to do something about it." And so, the legendary Axl Rose, dressed in his characteristic rock look, dark sunglasses, red bandana, and a leather jacket, got into a black SUV and headed to JFK Airport. Sophie was still sitting on the same bench, her gaze lost. She had already called her mom to tell her what happened, and now she was simply waiting for someone to come pick her up. Suddenly, she heard a growing murmur around her. Excited voices, people running, cell phone cameras pointing in a specific direction. She looked up, confused, and saw something that left her paralyzed. Walking toward her with that unmistakable attitude was Axl Rose in person. At first, she thought she was hallucinating, that the stress and disappointment had led her to imagine things. But then he stopped right in front of her, took off his sunglasses, and said with a soft smile, "Sophie?" She could barely nod. Her voice had completely vanished. Axl sat down next to her on the bench. "I saw what happened to you, and I came to fix it." Tears returned to Sophie's eyes, but this time they were different. They weren't tears of humiliation, but of disbelief, of gratitude, of an emotion so overwhelming it couldn't be put into words. I don't understand," she stammered. Axl smiled with that mix of warmth and rebellion that characterized him. "No one should be treated like that, especially not someone who has worked so hard to do something they love. So we're going to go in there and we're going to set things straight." He stood up and offered her his hand. Sophie took it, still trembling, and together they walked back toward the terminal. The crowd followed them at a respectful distance, recording every second. Upon entering, everyone's eyes fixed on them. The airport staff, who moments before had been so cruel and dismissive, now paled seeing who was accompanying the girl they had kicked out. Gerald, the supervisor, approached with a nervous smile. "Mr. Rose, what an honor." Axl interrupted him with an icy look. "It's not an honor, it's a disgrace. You kicked this young woman out of the airport without any valid reason. You humiliated her publicly, and now you're going to fix it." The supervisor tried to justify himself. "Sir, we had legitimate suspicions that..." "Suspicions of what?" Axl cut him off with a firm voice. "That a young girl can't afford a first-class ticket? That someone who doesn't wear a suit doesn't deserve respect? That's pure and simple discrimination." The silence in the terminal was absolute. Everyone watched the scene attentively. Linda, the counter employee, was trying to make herself invisible behind her computer. Axl continued, with that natural authority that only true icons possess. "I want you to give her back her ticket. I want you to offer her a public apology. And I want you to review your protocols, because this cannot happen again." The airport's general manager appeared almost immediately, clearly alarmed by the situation and the media attention it was generating. "Mr. Rose, Miss Morrison, please accept our sincerest apologies. This has been a terrible misunderstanding. Of course, we're going to resolve everything immediately." Within minutes, Sophie had a new boarding pass in her hands. Not only that, they had upgraded her to an even better seat and had offered her compensation for the inconvenience. But more important than any upgrade or compensation was the dignity that Axl Rose had given back to her. Before Sophie boarded, Axl stopped her for a moment. "Hey, when you get to Los Angeles, I want you to come backstage. My team will be waiting for you." Sophie couldn't believe what she was hearing. "Really?" Axl smiled. "Really. And also, I want you to know something. People are going to try to make you feel small your whole life. They're going to judge you by how you look, where you come from, how much money you have. But you're not small. You're giant. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Sophie hugged him without being able to help herself. "Thank you. Thank you for everything." Axl returned the hug with the same warmth. "There's nothing to thank. Just keep being you. That's all that matters." If you made it this far and liked this story, subscribe to the channel and leave us your comment about what you think of what happened. As Sophie boarded her flight with her heart full of a happiness she had never felt, the video of the encounter between her and Axl Rose went viral on all platforms. The comments were overwhelmingly positive, celebrating not only the rocker's generosity but also questioning the discriminatory practices of airlines. The airline, pressured by public opinion and media scrutiny, issued an official statement apologizing to Sophie and promising a complete review of their customer service policies. Linda and Gerald were temporarily suspended while an internal investigation was conducted, but the story didn't end there. 2 days later, at the Los Angeles concert, just before playing November Rain, Axl stopped the show for a moment. "I want to introduce you to someone special," he said before the thousands of people filling the stadium. "A few days ago, this young woman was treated unfairly just for being who she is. And that's not right. Sophie, where are you?" The spotlight searched through the crowd until they found her in the VIP area, her eyes full of tears again. The crowd erupted in applause. "This song goes out to you," Axl said, and began to play. Sophie couldn't stop crying. Not only was she seeing her idol live, not only was she in the front row, but he had dedicated a song before thousands of people to her. To the girl who days ago had been humiliated and rejected, to the girl who had been treated as if she was worth nothing. After the concert, as promised, Axl invited her backstage. There, surrounded by the band's crew, Sophie had the opportunity to talk with him more calmly. "Do you know why I did all this?" Axl asked her while signing her worn Guns N' Roses t-shirt. Sophie shook her head, still processing everything. "Because when I was your age, I was also that kid no one took seriously. The poor kid from town who dreamed of something bigger. And there were people who believed in me when no one else did. Now it's my turn to do that for others." He handed her the signed t-shirt and added, "Keep this. And when things get tough, remember that you matter, that your voice matters, and that no one has the right to make you feel less than what you are." Sophie left the backstage that night transformed. Not only had she lived the best day of her life, but she had learned something much more valuable, that true greatness isn't in fame or money, but in using your position to defend those who have no voice. Back in New York, Sophie became a kind of symbol. Her story inspired thousands of people who had lived through similar situations to share their experiences. Movements were created on social media, demanding better treatment at airports and public spaces. Even some airlines began reviewing their service protocols to avoid cases of discrimination. Sophie herself began using her new platform to talk about these issues. She created a channel where she shared stories of people who had been discriminated against and offered resources for those facing similar situations. She became a voice for those who didn't have one, and it all started with a Guns N' Roses t-shirt and a plane ticket. Months later, Axl Rose wrote to her again. He sent her a private message inviting her to be part of a campaign his team was launching about inclusion and respect in the music and entertainment industry. "We need people like you," he wrote, "people who understand what it's like to fight to be seen." Sophie accepted without hesitation. 1 year after the incident at JFK Airport, Sophie Morrison was on stage at a major civil rights event, sharing her story before hundreds of people. She was no longer just the girl who had been kicked out of the airport. She was an activist, a voice, a force. And as she spoke, in the front row, with a proud smile, was Axl Rose. Because sometimes, all you need is for one person to believe in you. One person who sees you when no one else does. One person who reminds you that you're worth it. Sophie's story wasn't just about a chance encounter with a rock star. It was about dignity, about justice, about not letting the world tell you who you are or what you deserve. It was about getting up after being knocked down. And it was about the strange and beautiful way the universe sometimes conspires to put you exactly where you need to be, with exactly who you need to meet, because deep down, we're all Sophie Morrison at some point in our lives. We've all been underestimated, ignored, unfairly judged, and we all need a reminder that we're bigger than the world wants us to believe. That afternoon at the airport, when everything seemed lost, Sophie never imagined that her worst moment would become the starting point of something much bigger. She never imagined that a simple, desperate tweet would reach her idol's eyes. She never imagined that idol would not only defend her, but would become an ally, a mentor, someone who genuinely believed in her. And perhaps that's the most powerful lesson of all, that even in our darkest moments, when we feel the whole world is against us, there's light waiting on the other side. There are good people, there's justice, there's hope. We just have to have the courage not to give up, the courage to keep believing we deserve something better, the courage to get up one more time, even when everything pushes us down. Sophie Morrison did it, and she changed not only her own life, but that of thousands of people who found strength in her story. And it all started with a worn t-shirt, a plane ticket, and the decision not to stay silent in the face of injustice. If this story moves something inside you, subscribe to the channel for more stories that make you reflect.